Hey y'all, Miss Osborne back again with another flip video. Today we're going to be looking at Mesopotamia and Egypt. Historians use the term ancient Near East to talk to mainly the civilizations that occurred in Mesopotamia area in Southwest Asia. The Nile, however, due to its geographic location, is known as ancient Egypt. The objectives that we're going to be focusing on in this video are what features defined the civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt, and what were the main achievements of civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt. Go-to historians will analyze the development as well as the technological and cultural contributions of Mesopotamia and Egypt. Make sure that you're taking good notes in either Cornell or outline format as we've talked about in class. It's okay if you need to pause or rewind the video and make sure you're taking good notes and you understand all of the information. Mesopotamia is located in Southwest Asia. This part of the Mesopotamia became known as the Fertile Crescent, the area between the Tigris and the Euphrates River. The area between that is also well suited for agriculture because the river flooded once a year, that left very fertile land along the banks of those two rivers. Large cities had started to form around 3000 BC. The Sumerians were one of the first societies to form. They had a distinct social hierarchy or a system of ranks. The ruling family, officials, and priests were at the top, then the merchants and artisans, then the peasant farmers, and then finally the slaves. Women's role changed over the course of time during the Sumerians because they went from having a place of honor to becoming more dependent on men. A place of honor for women is known as a matriarchal society. Women still had legal rights and could own property, however. The Sumerians practiced polytheism, or the worship of many gods. They believed that the gods acted like humans, and they were the ones that controlled the forces like flooding and rain. They would worship these gods in order to help make their civilization grow and to help make their crops better. At the center of each city was a temple, and at the center of each temple is a ziggurat, or a pyramid temple. At the other side of the ziggurat was the city's god. Sumerians invented the earliest known form of writing known as cuneiform, using a reed pen to make wedge-shaped marks on clay tablets. Scribes had to go through years of difficult schooling in order to acquire the skills. Cuneiform was the main way that the Sumerians kept their history and their practices known. The Sumerians are mainly known for their use of geometry and math. They developed a math system based on the number of 60, and they were the first ones to divide an hour into 60 minutes and a circle into 360 degrees. It was due to their use of geometry that they were able to create such elaborate structures and irrigation systems to uphold their civilization. There was many empires in Mesopotamia. One of the most well-known was Sargon's empire of the Akkadians. There was frequent warfare in Sumeria because of the many city-states and the invading people. The Akkadians in the northern region of Mesopotamia were ruled by Sargon, who was the first to create the most permanent army. He used the army to conquer all of Sumer and northern Mesopotamia. However, when Hammurabi came along, he became one of the most well-known rulers in this area. He created the Code of Hammurabi that was the first system of laws that would help to govern a state. These codes and laws were helped to unify his empire. Later on, laws are still used to unify people together. Hammurabi also improved the irrigation systems, organized an army, encouraged religious unity, and created a system of taxation for the Sumerians. As the Babylonian Empire declined, other civilizations prospered. The Hittites, for example, the Indo-European tribe from the north, their greatest assets were chariots. They were masters in ironwork and extracting iron ore and were able to dominate this area due to their warfare. The Assyrians were originally from northern Mesopotamia as well, where they farmed and raised cattle. The Assyrians' power relied on their military, including chariots, soldiers, and cavalry, just like the Hittites, but they were known for their ruthless punishment of the people that they took over. The Chaldeans were mainly known for their leader, Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar revived the power of Babylon and was the first to be able to stretch their empire from the Persian Gulf all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. Nebuchadnezzar built what's known as the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, as you see in the picture on the right. They were these beautiful, luscious gardens in which people focused on learning, like astronomy, and encouraging reading amongst the leaders. The Phoenicians were in the part of Mesopotamia known as Phoenicia. They emerged as a city of trade along the Mediterranean Sea. The Phoenicians were dependent upon trade in the sea because there was not a lot of farming available. As the trade developed, they needed more and more of a advanced alphabetical system. And so they created the Phoenician alphabet, which is one of the first alphabets known to man. The Hebrews recorded most of the events in the Torah, their holy book. Abraham is considered the founder of the Israelites and the Hebrews, and he migrated to Canaan because of a covenant he had with God. Famine caused the Israelites to move to Egypt, where they became enslaved. In about 1000 BC, however, the Israelite tribes set up a kingdom called Israel that was united under King David. The Israelites fell to the Assyrians and the Chaldeans, who then forced the Israelites into exile in Babylon. This became known as the Babylonian captivity, and it is mentioned in the Bible. This was the start of the Jewish diaspora, or the scattering of Jews outside of Judah, the main place where they had gathered before. Judaism was a monotheistic religion, meaning they believed in one God. At the heart of Judaism is the Ten Commandments, which is a set of laws that the Jews believed God gave them through Moses on Mount Sinai. Jews have a really strong belief in righteousness and justice that kind of emerged as a result of the Ten Commandments. The Persian Empire was led by Cyrus the Great. He founded them and let the conquered people keep their customs. He was known as one of the main just leaders of this time period. The unification of Persia, however, was accomplished under Darius, who divided the empire into provinces that were led by governors. This new system of dividing land allowed for him to have a more successful empire. He built and repaired roads to increase communication and built a mail system that helped to unify his empire even more. The main thing that Darius did was that he set up a money economy, where instead of bartering for goods and services were paid for through an exchange of some token of an agreed-upon value. Zoroastrianism was also known in this area as a Persian religion known after Zoroaster. He rejected the Persian gods. Ahura Mazda was the single wise god who was in constant battle against Ahriman, the prince of lies and evil, and people had to choose whether they were going to be loyal to Ahura Mazda or Ahriman. On Judgment Day, all would be judged by their actions. The good would enter paradise, and the evildoers be condemned to eternal suffering. In Egypt, the Nile River was the main river valley that flowed through the kingdom. It was the most important physical feature of the Egyptian empire because it regularly flooded, which allowed for excellent farming and fertile soil. The best farming occurred in the Nile Delta, the small strip of land toward the mouth of the river, kind of at the top where it creates a V. People started to build dikes, reservoirs, and irrigation ditches in order to use the water to help with farming during the dry season. Egypt was broken into two main regions. Lower Egypt in northern Egypt was located downriver of the Nile, and it seems opposite because lower would usually be at the bottom part of Egypt. However, the Nile flows opposite of what most people would think. Upper Egypt is southern Egypt, which is located along a series of cataracts or rocky stretches marked by swift currents and rapids. In 1300, Menes, the king of Upper Egypt, was able to unite the two regions and use the Nile to link the two regions as a trade route. The Old Kingdom appeared from about 2700 BC to 2200 BC. Under the Old Kingdom, pharaohs organized a strong centralized state. They believed that the pharaoh had the right to rule because he was actually a god himself. Power passed from one dynasty or one family to another. The period is characterized by the pyramids and other tombs that were used to house the pharaohs. The Middle Kingdom occurred a little bit later, 2050 to 1800 BC. The pharaohs had started to lose power to the nobles who were gaining much wealth and power amongst the people, and so the political stability started to disappear. Because of famine and disease, many led to resent the pharaoh. A new dynasty rose to power, and they established the Middle Kingdom, with people around the Middle East and into Nubia. Nubia is the region right below Egypt in Africa. The Middle Kingdom fell to the Hyksos until the next Egyptian dynasty was able to set up the New Kingdom. The New Kingdom's pharaohs decided that the best way to protect Egypt was to build a powerful military and to seek out buffer land. The whole purpose of buffer land was to create enough space between you and your enemies. Queen Hatshepsut ruled from between 1503 to 1482. She encouraged a lot of trade with many eastern Mediterranean lands along the Red Sea. She was also the first female to rule in her own name. Previously, females had been rulers, however, their uncles or another male figure had ruled instead of them. Ramses II was the most powerful ruler who ruled between 1290 and 1224. He increased the empire's size, built temples and monuments, boasting of his conquests, and Egypt as a whole civilization began to decline after his death. The main Egyptian religion is polytheistic. Their chief god is Amun-Re, the sun god. There are other gods that they regularly worship, like Anubis, the god of embalming or protector of the dead, Osiris, Isis, and Horus. You can see all of the main Egyptian gods and goddesses on the right. The Egyptians built temples to honor their god. The main feature was an obelisk, which were tall, thin pillars with a pyramid-shaped top. An example of an obelisk would be the National Monument in Washington, D.C. Common people didn't worship these gods as much, but they rather would go to annual festivals held by the priests. Mummification was the main way in which the pharaohs and also the Egyptians would make sure that they would prepare their people for the afterlife where they would meet the gods. The first steps of mummification was to remove all of the internal organs, beginning with the brain and then ending with the other organs. The only thing left in the body was the heart, because the heart was believed to hold the spirit. The body was packed in spices so that it wouldn't smell and would keep its shape, and wrapped in order to keep its shape as well. Once a body was mummified, the body had to be buried. It could not stay out. Egyptians were often buried with all of their possessions, as well as food and drink for the afterlife. Many of them were also buried with their slaves inside of their chamber, who may have been still alive. Egyptian society was broken down into a social structure very similar to the Mesopotamians. At the top was the pharaoh and his family, then the high priests and priestess and the nobles, then merchants, scribes, and other artisans, and at the bottom were peasants and servants. Women enjoyed a lot of independence in Egypt, more so than anybody else. This was pretty clear in the way that the Egyptian pharaohs were able to treat their queens. They could inherit property and conduct business and go to court, but they could not be scribes or hold government positions. Egyptians used a form of writing called hieroglyphics. This language was mainly complex because of the ideographs that symbolize an idea or an action. Over time, however, they needed a more simplified form of writing, and so they created demotic. They wrote on paper-like material made out of papyrus and wrote with reed pens and ink. The hieroglyphics demotic were able to be transferred over and interpreted due to the Rosetta Stone, which helped them to decipher and decode the ancient hieroglyphics. The stone's mainly flat and black, and it has the same message carved in three forms: hieroglyphics, demotic, and Greek, which allowed the people to be able to understand both demotic and hieroglyphics better. In Egyptian society, medicine was one of the main things that they were known for. Physicians became very, very skilled at observing symptoms, diagnoses, finding cures, doing the first surgeries known to man, and also using medicine to help heal people. Priests and astronomers studied the heavens, charting the movements of the planets, and mapping constellations to develop a calendar. Geometry was often used to survey the land and build the pyramids and temples and irrigation systems needed. Paintings, statues, poems, literature, temples, pyramids, tombs also gave us a lot of information about the daily life of people due to the paintings that they would draw on the walls. Now that you've gotten through this video, make sure that you read back over your notes and you have all the necessary vocabulary. Thanks for joining me for this video, and I'll see you in class.